even, you'd have a low yielding crop there and you think to yourself, like, these lambs now will skin this, but they actually don't really utilise much more than the higher yielding crop. Different factors influence that, obviously. Weather, contamination is a big thing. You'd see a lot of leaf on the ground that they wouldn't touch. So, the lambs you walking through the crop, and if it's mucky and dirt, all over the leaf, they're not going to eat it. But on the other hand, then, the higher yielding crops, as you said, they do have to reach up for the leaf. But it's just the stem, portion of stem is the problem then on high yielding crops. Like, on average there across 3 years, I think kale, we looked at it, 62% of it was made up of stalk, so which isn't really ideal for lamb grazing systems.
Hello, I'm Kieran Lynch and welcome to OviCast, the Teagasc Sheep podcast. Each episode will bring you latest insights, advice and technical updates for the sheep industry. Now, this week's episode I'm joined by postgraduate student Mark Dolan to discuss aspects of management on forage brassicas this winter. We discuss the yields of the different crops that Mark has grown over the last number of years, the utilisation rates and the factors that influence them, and how they've adapted management during periods of poor weather conditions. We finish up talking about lamb kill-out on the crops and the impact that regular drafting can have on grazing days. We start off, however, with Mark giving us a bit of background to the work he's been involved with over the past number of years.
So part of my research here in Teagasc, Athenry, was looking at different finishing systems for hill-bred lambs after weaning. So these be Scotch blackface lambs and Texas cross Scotch blackface lambs. So the crops we sowed here in Athenry were 3 brassica crops. We had a kale, forage rape and a hybrid brassica, other known as Red Start. So the hybrid brassica is a cross between the kale and the rape. These would have been sown just throughout the summer, start into May, and grazed in from first week in October. So the lambs would have been bought in August and then allocated to their diets and then put on the crop then in October, as I said.
Mark, you've repeated this over a couple of years. Like, we might cover some of the basics often. Is what kind of yields were you getting off them 3 brassicas, and did you see much variation from year to year?
There was a bit of variation here, and weather was obviously a big impact on that. So the first year, I think it was the year of the drought, so the different challenges in that regard. But generally, on average, across the 3 years, you'd be looking at about 6 to 7 ton. As I said, that can vary. I think kale, the first 2 years of the kale were very light. We're disappointed with that because usually it is a higher yielding crop. But then the third year, with a very good crop of kale, so it did vary across the years.
And look, I think that's something we're seeing around the country. We're seeing that variation. But by and large, like them 3 brassica, you were fairly uniform in terms of what yielded. It was the year effect had the biggest impact on them, was it?
Yeah. That's what you'd see. Like the forage rape and higher brassica were very good consistently. A small variation yield, but they were very consistent for getting a good yield.
Mark, you were saying that like at upper end you were hitting that kind of 6 to 7 ton yield, which was a good crop on it. In the more difficult years, what kind of lower yield were you hitting in them crops?
Yeah, so you would have been getting about 3 to 4 ton. Probably would have been the lowest in terms of crop yield. We'd see a big variation within years as opposed to different paddocks. Some paddocks might yield 7 or 8 ton and some might yield 3 ton. But
I probably should have said that at the start. Like you'd multiple paddocks in it, so you had that variation among fields as well.
Yeah. So we have 4 replicates of each treatment. So, and they would have been assigned across the area, so it'd be a variation.
Just from a grazing point of view on those crops, and I suppose this one maybe is a difficult question to give a definitive answer on, but from that kind of 3 to 4 ton crop, do we see a lot of around the country this year? Like yields have been variable up to the higher yielding crop of the 6 to 7 tons. What did the crop look like? Like the lower crops typically, Mark, maybe from a sheep point of view, probably a bit more leaf than stem.
Yeah, I think it's important, I suppose, to strike the balance in yield for lamb grazing systems. Like we would have seen that upper level yields of 7 or 8 ton. Lambs graze the leaf, but they're just not able to graze the stem. And the stem and leaf ratio is a big factor for that.
Well, essentially, it's the energy. Like so, the leaf is the higher energy bit of it. So it's more energy dense. So it's driving performance better.
Definitely, yeah. And I suppose in when you're managing these crops, it's important that you optimize that and maybe strike the balance between getting good utilization out of your crop, but also maintain animal performance. like we could let open the gate, I suppose, and you could let the lambs into the whole of crop and they could eat all the leaf and you can get mighty performance. But then on the other hand, your carrying capacity and days on the crop is going to be reduced, and I suppose that's very important too.
So look, I suppose from the yield point of view, there's a kind of a happy medium maybe there for lamb finishing systems, maybe as opposed to cattle systems where the higher yield wouldn't be as big of an issue.
Yeah, definitely. Like there's more ongoing research now in Athenry here, looking at the effect of crop yield and looking at the different utilizations. And I think there is a happy medium there where you can, looking at the crop when it's grown over the summer, it seems that when the leaf is grown, it sort of doesn't grow any more leaf. It's the stem proportion that's increasing as the yield increases. So that's definitely something that needs to be factored in, and there's more research going to be coming out on that now as well.
That's probably what's driving the overall yield a bit more. Look, you mentioned utilisation, and I suppose I'm cognizant of the back of my head here. It's been a difficult year now. Admittedly, your work has been in that Athenry, which is typically high rainfall, but in the southeast where we see more of these crops, they've experienced more of that. Let's talk about this a bit more. Give me maybe the kind of, in a good year, Mark, what typical utilisation are you expecting to get off them three different brassicas?
Yeah, so on average over the 3 years, as I said, we're getting 6 to 7 ton of dry matter per hectare on them crops, and you'll be looking at about 60% here on average throughout the year. Now this can vary an awful lot. The lambs start in October, they mightn't finish till January or February. Like you get down as low as 40% in times of heavy rainfall or in challenging weather conditions. But on the other hand, then you can get up to 70, 75%. On good weather, and if again back to the happy medium with the yield. If you have, a good proportion of leaf available there for the lambs, they will eat the majority of that leaf. But we did some different things. They're looking at the utilization of actually the actual stem and leaf, and the lambs do eat about 90% of the leaf that's offered to them. The rest might just contaminated leaf that they won't eat.
And look, I think if you can put that in context, maybe in recent weeks we're certainly not at the 60%. We're probably heading more 50 and maybe south of it in some weeks. Look, you've been through this kind of weather before with it. What steps did you take to kind of manage in those more difficult conditions? Like how often were you given breaks on that crop, and did you change it in more difficult weather?
Yeah, there surely was some difficult times out in the crop now throughout the winters, but look, what we were doing at the start was we'd give a 2 day break. So these allocations, they weren't just going up and put up a wire and they weren't an estimate. We went out and did an actual crop yield, which I think is important in a commercial sense, that you need to know what you have available and how long you're going to get out of it. So we would have done this by the clip and weigh method, similar to the grass, with a 1 meter squared quadrant, clipped down to the grazing height, and then that then gave us a yield, and we're able then to allocate the crop based off that. So we're estimating the intake of the lambs of about 4% of their body weight. So as I said, they were getting 2 day breaks at the start, and in times of bad weather or heavy rainfall, we brought this back to 1 day breaks and gave them maybe a meter or two more. So that just kept them fed, kept them, I suppose, keep the thrive going and not to let them slip back.
Yeah, and look, you mentioned this already. So you did there's that happy medium about getting as much out of the crop as you can, which obviously you want to do and try and budget it out. But also, his purpose is there for lamb finishing, so you can't really afford to go too hard on them either, or you're going to slow down performance.
Definitely, yeah, definitely. That's probably the biggest factor on grazing brassica crops. You're trying to get the most days out of it, because I know it's an expensive crop to put in now at the minute. But also, as you said, you're finishing lambs. You need to get them going as quick as you can and optimize their performance.
Just in terms of the higher or lower yielding crop, maybe is there an argument there? And someone in the really bad conditions, do you get slightly better utilization of them higher yielding crops? Maybe the leaf is further up, you get less contamination than the lower yielding ones.
Yeah, we would have seen a lot of that. Even you'd have a low yielding crop there, and you think to yourself, like, these lambs now will skin this, but they actually don't really utilize much more than the higher yielding crop. Different factors influence that. Obviously, weather, contamination is a big thing. You'd see a lot of leaf on the ground that they wouldn't touch. So, the lambs be walking through the crop, and if it's mucky and dirt, all over the leaf, they're not going to eat it. But on the other hand, then the higher yielding crops, as you said, they do have to reach up for the leaf. But it's just the stem portion of stem is what is the problem then on high yielding crops. Like on average there across 3 years, I think kale, we looked at it, 62% of it was made up of stalk. so which isn't really ideal for lamb grazing systems.
Like Mark, the one thing of this year, look, it's been wet, but the one thing we haven't seen yet is any real cold snaps. What impact has hard frost on those crops, and how did you manage them during that period?
Last year was the real, the only year really we experienced hard frost. I know a lot can remember. Jesus went over 10 days, I'd say. So for brassica crops, you can't graze them when they're frozen. So what we had to do was we had to supplement them with silage and introduce small amount of concentrates to the diet out in the field until that frost came off the crop. In terms of effect it had on the crop, we've seen the yield drastically reduced after the crop essentially was just dying away after the frost. Um, that really impacted the overall carrying capacity, I suppose, and getting lambs grazing over, after the Christmas and into the early spring. But so look, that was a extreme case. In your typical frost overnight, you just leave the crop for a couple hours in the morning until the frost thaws, and then it's safe to let the lambs into it then.
Okay. Look, you mentioned something else that's probably important at this stage of the season. Most are on these crops now, are on them a couple of weeks. Given the weather we had, maybe they're going through them a bit quicker than they should. Maybe the forced lambs to graze out and going through it a bit slower. Mark, it's still a good chance to actually take a yield on that crop and budget out how long have you left on it. And I suppose combined with that, we're going to need to know where the lambs are at. But the basics of still estimating what's left in the crop for the remaining part of the season is important at this stage deal.
Yeah, it's very important because you need to know, I suppose, even your drafting patterns and stuff, you need to get lambs off that crop. You need to know what you have left or how long it's going to get you through. And I suppose utilisation, all them things all feed into the overall carrying capacity, which is very important.
I suppose the other aspect of carrying capacity, and I'm going to talk about the lamb end of it for a moment, in terms of drafting lambs off it, if the crop went in well, you have a good yield on it, got the lambs settling well, you have your health treatments done, they can perform quite well on it. So in terms of drafting, Mark, what kind of killouts were you getting on those different brassicas?
Yeah, so we were aiming for an 18 to 21 kilo carcass. So as a result, we were killing lambs off of anything from 43 kilos and above. And in turn, then we were getting the carcass in between 18 and 21, and they're killing out about 44%, which is a good kill out when you consider what time of the year it is and everything. We also had another treatment inside on ad lib concentrates, and the brassica crops were on par in terms of kill out percentage with these. So there's a great opportunity there to get a good kill out on such crops.
I suppose just to caveat that, it was pure hill lambs and hill crossbred lambs you were working with on it. You might expect slightly higher even in lowland lambs.
Oh, definitely, yeah. And I suppose, you could leave them on the crop a bit longer and get up to the typical 23 kilo carcass. But, in terms of the experiment and stuff, we needed lambs, we needed figures to work with. So them lambs were drafted, and, it all had an effect then.
It does bring up another important point. If you have your batch of finishing lambs on it, certainly in your right, you could wait till you get to the very upper end of the carcass. Some will be gone over the limit, which, is not ideal either. But, reducing that number the whole time, that's going to have a big impact on the amount of crop used, obviously, but it'll have an impact too on the poaching and the utilisation as well, I imagine. Just reducing that overall graze number. So dropping out a small number as you go is important.
Definitely important, Kieran, yeah. 5 or 10 lambs every 2 weeks is a big number in terms of grazing days. If you draft a few as you go along, it might give you 2 or 3 weeks, even a month's more grazing than in the other side. So yeah, look, it's all about, doing all them things, trying to hit all the targets and get as many lambs killed off the crop as you can, I suppose.
And hopefully, fingers crossed, we get a dry week and might improve some of the grazing conditions for some farmers out there.
Definitely, yeah. A bit of good weather now is badly needed after the year we had. But yeah, look, if we got a good bit of weather, it's a bit easier for farmers to get a bit of performance and utilisation over it.
Mark, look, it was good getting that update for you. I appreciate you coming on. Thanks again.
No problem, Kieran.
We'll leave it there for this week's episode. I'd like to thank Mark again for coming on with us. Hopefully we'll get him back at some point before he finishes up to discuss the lamb performance and some more detailed aspects of that study he's been involved with. That's it for me. For updates from our sheep programme, keep an eye on our Twitter page @ChocolateSheep. I'm Kieran Lynch. Thanks for joining us. Don't forget to follow us for more episodes.